But let's talk about that test match. Another wonderful, absorbing test match. But it's official. The Springboks are officially better than the All Blacks, aren't they? Is that something we just have to accept, Mills?
Well, they are. I mean, they're the world champs. They've now taken the Freedom Cup back. That hasn't been won since 2000. Well, they haven't had it since 2009. And all going well, they should win the championship, Jeff.
Yep, they were better than us again for 80 minutes. I got that wrong. You know, I thought that the All Blacks would put together a performance because we've found a way when we've had our backs against the wall, particularly against the Springboks, Gus. And, you know, we did a lot of really good things. But ultimately, the game is won and lost in the last 20 minutes against the Springboks. So often, you have to be better. I have a lot of questions, and I don't have a lot of answers. And I think at the moment, the All Blacks themselves will have some really difficult conversations after this game, after what happened a week ago, and in preparation for the Wallabies in the Bledisloe Cup.
I mean, if you look at the All Blacks side, there were some positive moments in the last two test matches, and they did get themselves into a position to win, don't they? If you look at the margin, 6 points this week and 4 points last week, just how far away do you think the All Blacks actually are from the world champions?
I'm a bit more optimistic than you two lads, and I know the public, the expectation of this team, Jeff, I know you're looking at me, you're thinking, hold on, hold on.
Yeah, explain then, explain.
Yeah, but, you know, like you talk about those margins, and I know the people out there, they've got these high expectations of this team to win these games, and we've won them in the past, and, you know, we'll address the last 20 minutes, but there's still a lot of good stuff that I'm seeing, Jeff.
But that was my voice saying I thought they'd win. Like, I believed we would win. I thought we would respond. I thought we had the game. I thought we had the players. And like I say, I think the leadership was there. If you look at the form and the way that our forward pack responded for large parts of that game, I honestly believed that the All Blacks would win that game. Now I have questions because we haven't adapted. We haven't got better week to week. They've made some adjustments in terms of selection, and that didn't work for this test match.
Essentially, it came down to key moments, and that's when the South Africans absorb all that. It's almost like they're sort of all on the same on the same page. You know, they know what's coming. You know, and you've been there. I've been there in certain situations where teams are throwing everything at you, and then you sort of you have a little break and you think, well, is that all? And then they go to another level. This is what the Springbok team has. They've got the ability to do that, and when you make 7 changes and still come out and win the way they did, that's impressive.
But that's what you were concerned about, was the fact that they could make those changes and come out and win. And now their confidence levels are through the roof. Their belief, Gus, their understanding of how they want to play. You know, clearly they've got a policy about what they're trying to develop going forward. We've always understood and believed that they talk about a 4-year cycle, but now they're winning constantly and consistently against the top sides. Where do you see the Springboks now in terms of going forward, and how difficult is it going for us, not just us to beat them, but anybody else?
I think you probably look at the man pulling the strings, Razzie, up top, and you know, all the stuff he does in the media, and you know, he's quite an out there guy, but what he's doing to build that depth, you know, obviously they've got a range of older players, but they've got some young blokes coming through, and the balance and the ability to change 7 players and still win against an All Black side who created opportunities. I know we're a bit down, but created opportunities and put themselves in a position to win that game, but eventually didn't against a strong South African side. The future's looking really good for them because you've got that whole blend of experience up top to groom these younger boys through. And then the problem's going to be is when you come to that World Cup, who are you going to go for? I mean,
are Ireland better than us? Because Ireland got a test match against South Africa in South Africa.
Well, they did. But what you're seeing at the moment is a handful of teams that could beat anyone on the day. The South Africans, you know, are right at the top of their game. You know, they've come up with a formula that works best for them. You know, they've got a lot of players that are sort of coming through. The biggest thing for me, the concern, is the fact that psychologically, the All Blacks have got to get back on. They've got to get on board. Yes, there are some good stuff that sort of came on there. The next 2 games against the Wallabies, I think that's probably the most crucial in terms of Scott Robinson's reign. The fact that he's got to get the mental edge from his players.
Well, let's talk about the finish then, because you've mentioned it a couple of times in the last 5 minutes, and the All Blacks have struggled to score points in the final quarter of test matches. We've got something to show you here. For the last 3 test matches against South Africa, the All Blacks haven't scored a single point against South Africa. For the last 4 test matches in a row, the All Blacks have failed to score a single point in a test match, Jeff.
And that try, the 7 points at Twickenham was pre-World Cup, and Cam Roigard breaks out for a 60-metre try. And so the concern here is, and I think They made some adjustments. They made some selection changes for this Test match, Mills, and it didn't work when TJ Perenara came on and Beauden Barrett came on. But probably more concerning for me is, what are the conversations you have now with the players who didn't get an opportunity? Sam Darry, Safa Amua didn't come on. Fletcher Newell came on for, what, 5 or 6 minutes once we went to a scrum after the yellow card. What does that suggest when they weren't given an opportunity to go out and learn from the week before? I mean, how much further on are we in terms of their development, the fact they didn't get to play?
I think Newell was the big one, wasn't it? I mean, to have Lomax and, out there, and Tamati Williams out there, Lomax was out there for 70-odd minutes, so that's a massive shift in terms of the fact that, props out there. Why wouldn't you sort of, back to the fact that, to bring Newell on? I think the game plan for the All Blacks was to try and get a good lead out early, and they certainly came out in the second half and trying to pile on the points, and then have the experience, the likes of, the Barretts and also TJ Perenara come on and actually finish the game off. It didn't happen, and so that's probably the concern. What do they go to now? They've changed up in terms of selection. I think there's some really good, the guys that really stood up. Satiti stood up. There's a 22-year-old. We've got a different sort of loose sort of forward mould in terms of what he can do and where he can get to. Cortez Ratama, he was solid as well. It's hard when you're expected to win and you want to win, and when you strip things back, they are getting better. We've just, and this is what I mean. The next couple of games against the Wallabies, they have to make sure they get back on the horse and win well.
Have you ever been a part of an international bench as a prop that didn't come on?
Not at international level. It was. I mean, Tyrell and Tamaiti have been playing unreal, but to ask a front rower, scrums, mauls, rucks, getting around the field, they both carried immensely. Yeah. It's tough to do that for 50, 60 plus. Getting into the 70s is a big ask. But if you look at the past of the All Blacks, the strength of the bench has been massive. It's been a big part of our team. It's usually in that last sort of 20 to 15 where impact will come on and sort of change the game. So I'm behind what you're saying, Millsy, is looking at what they do against Aussie and maybe changing that up. You've both mentioned 6-2 splits in the past. Do we go to something like that?
Well, I think the biggest conversation is going to be about selection for the Splitters Low Cup.
Because so can I put something to you then that you brought up last year? You were the first brave person to say, let's put Ardie Savea on the bench so that we can have his impact in the second half of matches. Would you go back to something like that? Are you getting the impact you need from him to start Test matches?
Funnily enough, when you watch Ardie play, and he's being a workhorse, but to me, it's not an impact as an 8. It's more like a 7 if you watch him. High tackle count. He's getting himself involved in the game, but these are situations, look, we know he fights hard and he competes hard. And I talked about before last year's Rugby World Cup how much impact he could make in multiple positions off the bench. But it's about the role everyone plays, and it's the role the 6 plays, and I don't think Wallace Satiti's a 6. I think he's a number 8. I think the type of explosive runner he is. I'd be happy if Ardie had a test at 7. I really would, in terms of getting that balance. I have no doubt his speed off the side of the scrum, his work at the breakdown. Sam Cane, though, has been very, very good. But Sam Cane, let's be honest, this is it. This is the end of it by the end of this year. Sam Cane is not going to be playing for the All Blacks. He's heading offshore, and, he'll probably get to 100 test matches, and he'll deserve that. I'm just throwing out scenarios. Could Scott Barrett go back to blindside flanker if we haven't found that body on the blindside flank when Patrick Tuipulotu's fit? Tupou Vaa'i was really good. This is the discussion I'm having around selection now, because I don't think are convinced and sure about what our best combination is, not just to start, but to finish Test matches.
Angus, should we re-sign Sam Cane? Should we say, hey, don't go to Japan, stay here in New Zealand and keep playing for the All Blacks? Do we need him?
Oh, I mean, that's outside of my pay grade. Obviously, I've played 6 years with Sammy. I know what he's capable of, what he brings back to this union, to this jersey, and to see him work back. He hasn't played a test before these last 2 tests, and he stepped up into that 7 role like he had never left. So I know what he would bring, but hey, I'm not the one making those calls.
Are you working a 4-year cycle? Are you working in that? Are you trying to work towards the next Rugby World Cup? Because I've got a question for you. Are we good enough to just show up to a Rugby World Cup without winning consistently and go on and win? Do what South Africa have shown they can do, whereas they can lose test matches along the way to expose players. Are we good enough right now? Are we developing players? Are our competitions good enough to get us in a position we are prepared with our losses, with our defeats, to win the big one and playing the type of rugby we need to be successful?
I'm not so much in the 4-year cycle in terms of this this reign, this Scott Robinson, I think it's a more than 18 months to 2 years. I think you've got to give them time. They're starting to develop sort of guys in certain roles. You talk about have we got the perfect mix in terms of the loosies? I don't think we have. We're often reacting to what the other teams are doing. Well, why should we pick a bench to try and counter another bench? It's minute 1 to 60 to 70, and then bring on what you've got to find your DNA. We know what that is. I don't think our competitions are healthy. Our competitions aren't, turning, our up and comers into quality All Blacks, world class All Blacks. We're heavily reliant on the fact that the All Blacks go out there and try and put them out there into pressure situations. Yep. And that's where they're folding, and you can't teach that the lower grades because we're playing against the Aussies. The South Africans have found their groove because they've gone overseas and they've played hard in rugby, but they've also played a style of rugby that suits them. We've got to try and find that in terms of our competitions. And so I don't agree that our competitions are as competitive as what they should be. But I think as an All Black and the talent that we have got, I think we're capable of winning the Rugby World Cup in the next 4 years.
I think you can't discount, you talked about the current reign, and you look at the last regime, it was Graham Henry, Steve Hansen under him, Ian Foster under him. That's a lot of the same over a 10-plus year period. From 2011 to 2019, probably the greatest decade of international rugby from the All Blacks. So we've been spoiled with greatness, with excellence from the All Blacks. And we've probably come into the last phase of 4 years where we haven't won those games. We've lost to Argentina for the first time. We've lost to Ireland for the first time. And now, Razor comes in. He changes. There's a lot of change in this environment. So I didn't expect this to happen straight away. And like you said, it's not easy. Because we've been, like I said, spoiled with this greatness over this long tenure.
We haven't. And the transition hasn't been that great. I mean, you talk about it. Those guys, from Graham Henry, they had to learn a lot. Then we lost a few World Cups. Then you go on to Steve Hansen. And then in between Fozzie and this group now, I mean, that wasn't healthy, the way that sort of kind of happened. So we haven't sort of transitioned our coaches into that. We're almost starting again, but I think we're quite healthy. I think if 2 test matches, we're not far away. We're just far away in terms of the result.
Well, I think that's what I'm trying to get to is don't slam on the panic button just yet. We've had you talk about 10-point differences over the last 2 tests. South Africa have had that regime for a long time. They've been building really well. I think just trust the process.
Who's panicking, Angus?
Well, I'm just there's shots being fired left, right, and centre.
Shots being fired.
Equilibrium out here.
We're just trying to work it all out, aren't we, and have a discussion about it.
I think
It's called the breakdown.
We're breaking it down. Let's ray gun out here.
Let's ray gun.
But I suppose what I'm just trying to come from this sense where there's been a lot of change, and change isn't always easy. It takes change to grow, and I think we need to keep backing this team. Keep backing this coaching group, and they'll figure out the way. They'll come back stronger. I'm believing in them.